Let's go to this now, dear. Leader John Steenhuisen has defended his recent visit to Ukraine. He says he wanted to witness the destruction with his own eyes. Steenhuisen also says South Africa is headed for a terrible winter due to the economic aftermath of the Russian invasion, but he's also received some criticism for his trip. Let's then speak to the DA leader now, who joins us for the conversation. Mr. Steenhuisen, thank you so much for your time. Did you achieve all you intended to?
Yes, certainly I did. I've been able to establish the situation on the ground for myself and be able to speak with first-hand knowledge of the situation. I've been able to develop a network of key individuals there who will be able to keep me updated about the progress and the situation on the ground as it unfolds. And I've been able to ascertain where the problem areas for the future of South Africa in the coming weeks and months lies, and what we could be doing to try and mitigate against those. So absolutely, I believe the trip was very successful, and it certainly had the intended effect.
I'm keen to find out what are you going to then do with this information that you've managed to gather?
Well, we've already made a number of suggestions. I addressed a briefing earlier today about some things that South Africa could be doing, but chief amongst these is being able to prepare South Africa for what's coming in the weeks and months ahead. There's going to be a worldwide shortage of basic foodstuffs, grains, and it is going to impact on fertilizer and fuel. And we need to start thinking very carefully as a country about how we mitigate against that, because it's going to really impact the poorest of South Africans the most. But every single South African is going to feel in their back pocket the effects of the war in Ukraine. And nobody can pretend that it's not going to affect them. It is absolutely going to have a major impact in Africa and in South Africa.
You've received some criticism from this trip, and of course you have in fact defended it, but I'm keen to find out what are your thoughts on this. A part of the criticism was written by Kanisa Hunter, who says the DA is trying to draw attention to rising poverty while poking holes in South Africa's foreign policy, and is shambolic messaging and plain clownish. How did the DA think Steenhuisen's Ukraine adventure would not be seen as posturing? She's not the only one who seems to think that this was a PR disaster.
Well, I don't think it's a PR disaster. And I think that people like Juanita Hunter are incredibly short-sighted and very parochial, because this impact of this war, although it's 9,000 kilometers away, is already being felt here through rising fuel prices, and it's going to be felt a lot more keenly and sharply in the weeks and months to come. And I think it's very important that decision makers in South Africa understand all the implications of the situation and are able to make informed decisions and inputs into the debates. So I would say the real people at fault here are individuals like Juanita Hunter, who are very quick to criticize, but not willing to get up and go and see for herself. She's a journalist. She should be camped out in Ukraine, giving South Africans a perspective, instead of poking holes in people who are actually out there doing something. It's very easy to avoid criticism. The way you avoid criticism is by doing nothing, saying nothing, and being nothing. I'm not going to do that, not in a crisis that's going to impact on my country and my citizens in the way that this impact is going to have in the coming weeks and months, particularly on food security, on fertilizer, on fuel, and of freedom, which is the question that we need to decide which we're on the right side of in this particular debate.
You say that part of it is saying nothing, and then at the beginning you say that you wanted to witness this firsthand so that you can speak with authority. At the same time, talking about saying nothing, I watched your 16-minute address this morning. I'm very keen to find out as to why did you not mention an issue that developed overnight in the very Western Cape from which you were speaking from, an issue of Khayelitsha, where 6 people were gunned down yesterday, but that did not feature at all in your speech.
Well, first of all, the MEC, Regan Allen, has been on the scene, and he has been communicating directly on that particular matter which is a matter for the provincial government, but also for the national policing to take responsibility for. I also think you must be very careful about being one-dimensional. Just because you're dealing with me on this particular interview, it doesn't mean you're less interested in the Hillary Gardi murder or you're less interested in load shedding. You can be interested in a number of issues at the same time and be as keenly invested and interested in
Mrs. Steenhuisen, pardon me, I'm told we're almost out of time, but I have to really follow up with this one. We cannot say that this is an issue for provincial government only as well as national government. The DA leads in the Western Cape. So let's talk about whether or not these 6 individuals did not deserve to make it into your speech, because you say that you want to speak about the issue of Ukraine with authority. Do you not want to speak with authority about the issue of Khayelitsha?
Yes, of course, but you've asked to interview me about Ukraine, and I've spoken about that. I'm more than happy to come on anytime you want and talk about the under-resourcing of the police services in the Western Cape. And I think it would be very worthwhile for you to interview the MEC of Safety and Security in the Western Cape, who is responsible for this on a provincial level. Of course, I'm concerned about this. I'm devastated at the murder of Hillary Gardi. I'm devastated that we live in a country where thousands of women are brutalized every single year, and this government doesn't do anything about it. But we must be clear about what we invite people to talk about, and that we can be taking issues up in multiple forums, and we can be driving different issues at the same time. And just because you've an interest in poverty and food price increases and the impact this is going to have on poor South Africans doesn't mean you're not interested in those things. They are as important, and they are raised regularly. And we've been raising the point that our policing resources in the Western Cape have the lowest police to population ratio in the entire country. And it's very difficult for a provincial government that doesn't have the power over the police to deploy resources and to assign people to stations, even though the city and the province have now had to step in using provincial and local government funding through the LEAP program to keep people safe. It doesn't mean that those things aren't important. And of course, they're important and they deserve the same attention. But we must be clear about what we invite people on to talk about.
Talking about the same attention, are you going to be visiting the families of those who've been killed in Khayelitsha and also conduct a fact-finding mission in order for them to get answers? Because this is the 3rd such incident since March, and we saw even that tavern shooting in 2020. So a lot is going on, and even part of the criticism... Even part of the criticism says that you are also neglecting what is happening in your backyard. I've seen you in the streets of the Western Cape, but are you going to ensure that this is resolved as speedily as you are calling on the war to end as speedily as well?
Well, I think the whataboutism doesn't help, but no, I'm not going to be able to get there tomorrow because I'm going to be back in KwaZulu-Natal tomorrow to go and assess whether there's been any progress in relieving the humanitarian crisis there as a result of the flooding. And after that, I'm going to the Eastern Cape for the very, very same purpose. So the earliest I'll be able to do that is next week, but I certainly have been in contact with our representatives of our government, not only about the Khayelitsha matter, but about the shooting that took place in the hospital this weekend. And we've discussed at length how government, national government, is depriving the Western Cape of policing resources and the impact this is having, and the fact that we are now, as the Democratic Alliance government there, having to use provincial and city resources to try and fill this gap due to this, I believe, very unfair underfunding and under-resourcing of policing in the Western Cape, precisely because we can't sit in our hands while these sorts of things are happening. And this is a government that's doing something proactively about it. So as soon as I get back from KZN and the Eastern Cape, I'll be sure to go out there.
All right, Mr. Steenhuisen, thank you so much for talking to us this evening about your trip to the Ukraine, as well as the developments in Khayelitsha and the trip that you're now going to take to KwaZulu-Natal. Certainly appreciate it. That was John Steenhuisen, leader of the Democratic Alliance.